So at this point, we've looked at how function call allocation is handled. The allocation of something like v and t, going back to our original example. But we haven't yet talked about control flow, how the code jumps from Q into P, from P into Q, or how we return from Q back to P. And in particular, we have this issue where we might have a whole chain of returns, like we saw with main and fib, or other examples. We don't know who called P in this case. On the call side, P is calling Q, and it knows both where it's calling, right? It has that specific address, and also it knows where the call should return to. It knows specific things like that. On the other hand, on the callee side, this return, you can't look at that return and say exactly where it's going to go. Could be to this call to Q or to some other call to Q in the program. So the caller needs to communicate the part that the callee needs to know, that is, this return address. And it can do that by putting it on the stack. And putting it on the stack ensures that we can have a whole chain of returns, each on its own stack frame. x86-64 provides some instructions that help do this kind of thing. The first one is called call, which that's going to be like when P is calling Q. The call instruction is going to push the next value of the instruction pointer, like where it would go if it weren't calling a function, onto the stack. That is, it's pushing a return address onto the stack, and then it's also jumping at the same time to the source specification here, which would be something like the address of Q. For example, when P is calling Q, the instructions at the machine level might look something like this: call Q where hex 5064 is the address of big Q. Big Q unrelated to this little q here. That little q is just saying use all 64 bits of this address. The opposite of call is return. So return is simply going to pop the return value, the return address, off of the instruction, off the stack, and put that return address into the instruction pointer. Right, so again, it's just a pop Q onto RIP, except you can't use pop Q with the instruction pointer. The return, very much like moves versus jumps, return is the pop analog that deals with the instruction pointer. So when P calls Q, it's going to do a call Q, and when Q wants to return back to P, it's going to do a ret Q. We can look at that in a concrete example here. We've got our main with F and G call example, and we're just going to look at the F part here. So here I've got F, and I've just highlighted the relevant parts of the machine code for these. So main has a call Q in it with an address that corresponds to F, and then some instruction after that. It doesn't really matter what that instruction is doing at the moment. F, this is the starting point of F, and this is where F finishes up. So this call Q is going to turn out to be balanced by that ret Q. Also, F is going to call printf, so we'll just say printf is sitting out there somewhere, and it has a ret Q, and we'll just look at its ret. We'll pretend that printf doesn't call any other functions. We can look at what happens here in terms of a concrete stack. I'm also going to show the instruction pointer register here, just to highlight where we are in the program. But instead of writing RISP over here, I'll just show it as a pointer on the right-hand side. So our stack has some stuff. We don't care exactly what it has at the moment. When the processor sees call Q, what that means is take this next address, 4045C, put that onto the stack. So RSP got bumped to a lower address. And then at the same time, put this address, 400560, into the instruction pointer. So that jumps us down into F's implementation. F is going to do some work. In particular, it's going to make some room for its local variables. And eventually, it's going to get to a call Q of printf. So that will, again, mean take this next address, put it on the stack, right here, and cause the instruction pointer to jump to the beginning of printf. Printf does a bunch of things that causes output to show up in your terminal. And then eventually, it runs the retq instruction. Retq means take this address, pop it off the stack, and put it in the instruction pointer. So that means this blue arrow is going to point down to hex 400575 right here. And at this point, before the function f returns, it's going to release that space it made for local variables on the stack by adding hex18 to RSP. That's 3 slots, 3 8-byte slots. And then it does a retq, just like printf did, which means take this address off the stack, put it in the instruction pointer, and that returns us back into main.